There is a tremendous amount of satisfaction that comes from building something. Sometimes the building process can be challenging, and sometimes it's tedious, but it is worth it when you see the finished product. The greater the project, the more satisfaction it brings. Building a Lego model is fun, building a house is even better, and building a life on the truth of who Jesus is and what He has done is better still. Together, we will learn to build our lives upon the rock.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Robert Kelly. I'm one of the pastors here at the church. For those who haven't yet had a chance to meet, so glad you've come out and joined us for worship this morning. We, quite a few years ago now, my wife and I, we were leaving my undergraduate program. That was in business out in California. And we were entering a graduate program for study of the Bible. They call it seminary. It's just the name of a graduate program for people who are going to be trying to, figure out what they want to do in Christian ministry and all that kind of stuff. Well, as part of that process, I didn't come from, a whole church background, and I hadn't been super involved in that kind of side of the Christian world. And I didn't go to Bible college either. So I felt like I was at a bit of a disadvantage going in for graduate work in the Bible. Well, when we got there was a whole battery of tests, as if I wasn't insecure enough. And so they're giving you personality assessments. They're doing psychological analyses. They're doing this like a Bible knowledge test, to see if where they start you out in your classes, if you've got to start with like remedial Bible, or whether you can go to some of the more advanced classes. I was pretty stressed out about the whole thing, feeling like I was at a disadvantage. Well, one of these tests, some of you are familiar with, it's called the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It's hundreds of questions and all sorts of unusual questions, some of which I found very funny. And so we're taking this test, and here are some of the questions. One says, I find it hard to keep my mind on a task or job. I think if you can concentrate on something for more than 5 minutes, you don't have enough going on. 5 minutes should be about it. Of course I have a hard time staying focused I have a hard time staying focused when I'm standing up here. It says at times, here's another one, my thoughts have raced ahead faster than I could speak them. Usually it's my mouth that's running too fast. I have strange and peculiar thoughts. I feel tired a good deal of the time. It's like a badge of honor in New York. Of course I'm supposed to feel tired. I mean, if you don't feel it when you wake up refreshed and ready to go, you're not tired, get a job. At times, I feel like picking a fight with someone. Only when I'm tired. I sometimes tease animals. It was shortly before then that I had decided that we had a cat back then, and I decided it would be a fun experiment to sort of tie a balloon to its collar, because you put a balloon on a cat, it's like give it 6 feet of length on the string, and the cat looks behind it, and it sees this little thing there, right? And it moves a little, and it moves with it. But, it doesn't ever catch the cat, but it sort of never gets away from it. So it moves a little faster, and the balloon chases the cat a little faster. And ultimately, the cat's running full speed around the house, trying to get away from this thing that is chasing it all over the house. It's hilarious. So yes, I sometimes tease animals. Now, there was a group of questions that were, to me, I didn't study in the Bible, so I sort of felt like I had a grasp on a lot of this stuff, and I came across questions like, I believe I am being plotted against. Well, I know what Paul said. He said that Satan was trying to hinder him. So yes, there is, someone who plots against me. I have enemies who really wish to harm me. Well, it's a plural. And the book of Revelation says that Satan has his angels. So yes, it's not even a single enemy. There's enemies out there who have it in for me. They wish to harm me. Someone has been trying to influence my mind. I thought of King David. It was said that he was incited by Satan to do something against the Lord's will. Yes. So yes, somebody is trying to influence my mind. They're poking around in here. This is some dangerous stuff. Another one, someone has it in for me. Peter tells us that our enemy is like a roaring lion, seeking someone that he can devour. Yes, these are all true. So of course I leave the test and a whole bunch of my friends say, Robert, that was the psychological evaluation. That wasn't a Bible test. You can't be saying yes to any of those things. You're going to get flagged. They're going to come looking for you like, hey, buddy, we got to talk. You know, you're hearing voices, you're seeing things. You got an enemy out there who's trying to get you. You're a little bit neurotic. It was like, but it's true. We're a Bible college and you're all lying on the test. And I think about this because now we're in a topic this morning. We're talking about an enemy and about resisting evil. And what if it's true? What if we have an enemy who's actively seeking our harm? I think at Beacon, at this stage in our development as a congregation, this might be one of the more vital topics for us to talk about. There are a group of folks here that you're pre-Christians, and you're evaluating whether or not you want to jump all in or not, whether or not you want to kind of get on this Christian journey. Well, you know what? We owe it to you to be up front and to tell you, give you a peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and tell you a little bit more fully and completely what it really means to follow Jesus. There's another group of you are brand new to the faith, or you're younger in your faith, and suddenly you find this thing, this struggle inside of you, a war. You've got something waging against this other thing that's growing, and you feel this battle, and you're thinking, I came to Christianity, and I kind of was hoping that I would get some peace, and instead I'm in the middle of this turmoil. What in the world is happening? It seems like my life's exploded since I decided down this road. And then there's a whole other group of folks. Maybe you've been in the Christian life for some time, and you were able to just at one point in life hit cruise control, and you're just sort of sailing along, minding your own business, and there's no sense of struggle or battle anymore. My hope is that today's topic will be able to address each of us, no matter where we might be in our journey. You see, Christianity isn't a cakewalk. There isn't some promise that it's going to be a ticket to an easy life. Quite the contrary. Christians are told that we are in a spiritual war against a powerful enemy. We're going to be studying a familiar passage in Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, starting in verse 10. If you could open up in a Bible, that would be a great help this morning. If you don't have your own Bible, you can use one of the Bibles that are here. I'd encourage you guys, if you don't yet have a Bible, to get one. And if you do have one, to bring it to church with you. Because there are times, we're hoping to all learn together how to read God's Word and study it. And so if you've got your Bible with you, you can mark it up and you can circle things and underline things and make notes and all that kind of stuff. And if you're a note taker and underliner, that's great. Please don't do it in our Bibles, because maybe you're not underlining the right stuff. But no. So if you could bring a Bible with you to church, that would be a great help for all of us, I think. So starting in verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. When Paul says here, finally, that very first word, it's not like he's saying, here's the end of the conversation, just the last thing I want to mention to you. It's more as if he's saying, most important. Most important. He's capturing for us here in a moment the key to understanding the rest of his letter. It's as if he's saying, if you don't understand what I'm about to say, the rest of it will barely make any sense to you. He wants us to realize that we are at war. That this is it's a central idea for him. He's telling us, most importantly, you have to realize you're in it now. You're not going to get a run-up. You're not going to get like 16 weeks off where you get to figure things out. You're in it, and you're in it now. Any learning you do has to happen in the midst of the fight. Any growth has to happen in the midst of the fight. Any recovery, it has to happen in the midst of the fight. You are in it now. And there's no way around this. It is a war. And now it's time to fight. There's an old preacher, J.C. Riley. He says, there are thousands of men and women who go to chapels and churches every Sunday and call themselves Christians. Their names are in the baptismal register. They're reckoned Christians while they live. They're married with a Christian marriage service. They mean to be buried as Christians when they die. But you never see any fight about their religion, of spiritual strife and exertion and conflict and self-denial and watching and warring. They know literally nothing at all. The saddest symptom about many so-called Christians is the utter absence of anything like conflict or fight. They eat, they drink, they dress, they work, they amuse themselves, they get money, they spend money. They go through a scanty round of formal religious services once or even twice a week. But the great spiritual warfare, its watchings and strugglings, its agonies and anxieties, its battles and contests, of this they appear to know nothing at all. And he's heartbroken by that. Paul wants us to see we are in the midst of a battle. It ought to mark the life of the follower of Christ. And if you look down in that verse again, he says, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. The old translations, Chris and I were laughing about it because we remember they used to say against the wiles of the enemy, the wiles of the devil, like, he's somehow wily. And that's really what this idea is they're capturing, the schemes, this conniving, this plotting and planning and patience. I remember this old saying, it's just because I'm paranoid, we've got a slide, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean the world isn't out to get you. You only have to be right once. When we look at the story, the topic of the devil, it's so quick it's so easy for us to discount it. What are we really talking about? Come on, we're going to talk about the devil, the horns, the tail. This is ridiculous. It's like a caricature. And anyone who believes those kinds of things, you're sort of naive and a little bit backward. And I think quite the opposite. I think it is naive to look out into this world, to understand the human longing for goodness, and yet our propensity for evil, and come up with any other solution than a spiritual war for the heart, the soul of humanity. I don't know that you can come up with any more rational explanation for what we see around us each and every day, for what our own internal struggles teach us about these things. It is remarkably rational and reasonable for us. In fact, I'd say you're naive to understand humanity in any other way. It's so easy for us to think, oh yeah, I believe in God. You might even believe in angels. You start to get to this side of it and you're like, oh no, I don't buy that. Oh, because now suddenly the realm of the supernatural is impossible for us to embrace? You're okay with God in the supernatural, but you're not okay with some sort of enemy of God? It seems to be the normal way we understand all of this world. It does make an intuitive and intellectual sense. And this enemy is indeed scheming, crafty and planning and patient. Paul gives us a word here. He says in 12, for our struggle, if you notice that, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood. I like this because he's picking up another word, another idea. Soon he's going to give us warfare and armor kinds of things, like a storming the castle kind of a thing. But this word is actually more like the wrestling arena. He's talking about a struggle that might have taken place in the Greek sports. And so he's saying, I think, wrestling to bring us into that moment. He's talking about close combat here. We're going to get in it, and we're going to get in it in an intense and serious way. We're not going to be able to lob, and fight this battle from a great distance. This isn't a war of catapults and spears and javelins. This is a war, a brawl, a street fight, a struggle. He wants us to know that this struggle is not a joke, that it is serious, serious business. We also are told that we each need to put on the full armor of God in order to have victory. So look at verse 13. Therefore, put on the full armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, it's going to be a key phrase, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. When he tells us to put on, it's a very active idea. You can almost think of it in the reverse. If you don't put on, If you don't take this armor and put it on, you won't have it. It is your responsibility. This isn't something that we're just simply going to ask God to do for us and He'll just make sure that it's okay. He's saying, you need to put it on. It is your armor and it is your responsibility. Put it on. You can only imagine what will happen if we don't. He's already given us the warning. He's already telling us what we're heading into. He's saying, you've got to put it on. You've got to take this active role. Because this day of evil is coming. The day of evil. When we think about this day of evil, I think it's helpful for us to go back to what we'd learned a while ago about the day of the Lord. Throughout the Bible, we hear about this idea of the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is coming. And at the same moment, it's a future day, but it shows up throughout history. So you can have your own day of the Lord, the day of reckoning for you. There could be a national day of the Lord when judgment is coming upon your city, your town, your country. That is called also in the Scriptures the day of the Lord. But it all points to the ultimate day of the Lord. And in some ways, thinking about this day of evil, it might be helpful for us to do that, because in each and every moment of your life, you are faced with these little bits of the day of evil. You might have a particularly nasty morning. It's a day of evil. It's a day of temptation and trial and struggle. You may also be in the midst of a day of evil and not see it yet. That's why there's so many warnings to be alert to this day of evil. And you also might have amazingly painful seasons where it is a day of great evil. It's a battle of epic proportion that you are immersed in. It might be ripping you apart inside. It might be waged all around you with a type of spiritual violence that leaves you breathless and frightened. It's a season of the day of evil. And in each of these moments, not even knowing when these days will happen, when they will come, we're called to be ready so that we can stand. So that we can stand. That's what he said. Now, I want to point out that I think this is a lot less about a massive offensive. A lot of times we're talking about how we're going to take some new hill for the kingdom. We're going to fight some great cause of justice. We're going to do some great good. And together we lunge in this massive offensive. And the Scriptures have language like that. I don't think that's what this is about. I think he's talking about a lone soldier standing against an onslaught that is coming at him, possibly from every side. The reason I think this is if you look at the context of it later on, you'll see the kinds of things that Paul is framing this with. He's talking about an inner battle. It's the battle against our own sin nature. We're not fighting a battle out there against societal sin, corporate sin, national sin. We're fighting a very personal battle here. A battle against the worst tendencies of our heart. This battle against our rebellion and our sin and our wickedness. And he's saying, no, that's where we've got to put on this armor. We've got to stand firm. We've got to work from the inside out so that you can stand up against the onslaught that is inevitably going to come. This is a battle for personal holiness. So I want to take just a few minutes. I'm going to look through some of the different ones. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on parts of the armor and not so much time on other parts of the armor, but I just want to walk kind of right through this passage with us and point out some of the things that Paul might have been trying to hint at here. Remember, he was a prisoner of Rome for many, many years. And so he was very familiar with Roman armor. And so you can almost imagine him writing this out and thinking through the application of these different pieces of armor and for warfare and how that might apply to the Christian fight. He's creating all of these great metaphors for us, and I think we can learn a lot about this battle as we take a closer look at them. Look at verse 14. He says, "Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist." Now, the belt of truth isn't quite a weapon. It's not really exactly armor, though it isn't a little bit. It is this little piece that protects the section of the warrior that's from like here to here. Now, it might be helpful to remember in the ancient world that the seat of the emotions is not the heart. That's what it is for us here in America in the 20th century. We think of the seat of the emotions as the heart. They didn't. They thought of the seat of the emotions as the bowels. So your most vulnerable part, the part of you, your emotional self, and your privates all need to be protected by this belt of truth. And so it does not surprise me that this would be the very first thing you would put on when you were going out to war. Most of you guys are like, yep, that's the first thing I'm definitely grabbing. I'd leave my sword at home if it meant I could take my belt of truth with me. And so now you take, what does it mean for us? Why is it the belt of truth? Because now you take the truth of God, that's in His Word, through the power of the Spirit, all that kind of stuff, and you apply it to the most vulnerable parts of yourself. You apply it to your emotional makeup, to the parts that will be most painfully experience the warfare. Many times, you might think of this as the beginning of the strengthening of you so that you can withstand. This is the inner work. This is the application of God's truth inward to the deepest recesses of who you are. You know, for many people, I'll give you an example. If, let's say you have a great deal of insecurity. Well, how do you apply God's truth to that? Who are you in God's kingdom? And if you don't embrace who God says you are in His kingdom, and if you don't embrace the truth that He tells us about sin in our hearts and the nature of this world and this epic battle, how will you end up making real progress? If you can't embrace, if you're living your Christian life in a place of insecurity, you know, it's funny, I came across a story about insecurity. It was a guy, I've told some of you guys this, there was like a Russian guy, he was really insecure about his relationship with his girlfriend. And he wanted to propose, but he wasn't really sure if she really liked him. And so he faked his death. So what he wanted to see is when she saw him dead, whether she'd be broken up about it. So she comes upon the scene. She sees him in this car accident, broken body, covered with blood, fake blood. And she breaks down. She starts crying. And he jumps up. He's excited because she loves him, and he proposes. That's just messed up. That is so screwed up in the head. My goodness. That's what our insecurities do to us. They make us do all of these ridiculous gymnastics and stupid things. We got to press that. Now you do that for every part of your life. To all of these deepest recesses of your most vulnerable places, you take the Word of God, you take the truth of God, and you apply it to the strengthening of your inner person. Now, it also comes with it's a bit of a double-edged sword for us here, if I want to mix up all of our metaphors. Because it's also the truth of God. What I mean by that is anything that you disagree with that God says, you've immediately put yourself in a lie. So you're looking at the Word of God, you're looking at the truth, and you say, you know what, I'm going to apply this to my life, and I'm going to apply this to my life, and I'm going to apply this to my life. And that's great, you're applying the truth. And then you come across a few things you don't like so much. This one I don't like so much. I think God missed it on this. This one, not as important to me. I don't really want to apply that to my life. Then you've decided not to apply the truth. You've actually embraced a lie. We think we can pick and choose. If it is the truth of God, then it sits above us. We have to submit to its authority. It has final say. We don't judge which parts of it are good for us and which parts are bad. It does. And as we submit ourselves more fully and completely to its authority, then we can take the truth of God to the innermost parts of who we are. The breastplate of righteousness, verse 14. With the breastplate of righteousness in place. Now, of course, this is, most of your vital organs are right here. And so you would want a breastplate to make certain that your vitals are protected. It's the quickest way to die in battle. Nick a heart, nick a lung, you're going to bleed out in no time at all. Terribly quick way to be taken out of this battle. And I think the breastplate of righteousness gives us the understanding as to what he's talking about. There is a moral code There is a way that we ought to live. Obedience to the ways of God. A morality, a godly holiness, a decision about the things we do and we won't do. And we will be protected, our vital organs will be protected when we live with integrity, when we have godly character and obedience to His standards of conduct. And honestly, it's sort of useless to deny your sin anyway. You know, you think about it for a moment. We just we'll keep it quiet because God won't know. He sort of already does. There's no keeping it quiet from Him. And besides, the Scriptures promise us that your sin will find you out. You can't fake character. It has to really happen. You've got to be transformed. You can't fake it. You'll end up like this other guy, and I think it was Russia again, Russia has their own version of the Street View, Google Street View. You guys have used that? You click on the Google Street View and you get to see the building that you're going to pull up to, right? You guys not use Street View? It's very cool. A little bit creepy. And this one lady, she wanted to go find out, what the place that she was going to go to looks like. So she clicks on the Street View and she sees the building. She's never been to this address before. And she sees her fiancé there in the picture. Pretty freaky, right? Out of all of the places you could possibly go, he's standing there. And he's not alone. He's got his arm around another woman. Now she thinks, wow, that is unreal. But of course, it was probably taken years ago, like before we were. And then she zooms in and she could see that he's wearing a cast, which he had like the last year that they were together. So she knows this picture was taken while they were still together. You can imagine what happened when he came home. She pulls up the Street View and she's like, care to explain? Your sin will find you out. Now, for us, there's something scary about that, but it's also unbelievably liberating. To live with an integrity and character, this can be a very powerful thing for us. I would say, as an encouragement to you guys, you may not want to dispense with guilt quite so quickly. Nowadays, it's very popular to kind of get past your guilt as fast as you can, not to carry unnecessary burdens of guilt and all of this kind of stuff. And I understand there is a very dangerous and negative side to guilt. But last week we talked about being filled with the Spirit. And there's a conviction that can come from the presence of the Spirit working in your heart. And He begins to reveal these deficiencies of character. And when that happens, you want to go down that road. You want to experience it. You want it revealed. You want that guilt to motivate you toward a change so that you can be strengthened for this inevitable battle. Instead, we often want to get rid of the guilt. There's a guy, he went to a bar and he sat down, he got a drink, and the bartender pours him a beer, he takes a sip, and he throws the rest of the beer in the bartender's face. The bartender's like, have you lost your mind, man? What are you insane? He's like, actually, I'm having a really big problem with this. I'm so sorry. I can't believe it, but I do this all the time. I take a sip. I try not to do it, but I end up throwing the bartender's like, you need to get help, man. Get out of here. You're never getting served a drink in this place again. So, he leaves. He doesn't see him. 6 months later, the guy comes back into the bar. The bartender remembers. He's like, get out of here. He's like, no. You told me I had to go get help, and I did. I've been seeing a psychiatrist for 6 months, and I am cured. Bartender's like, hey, that's great. I did some good. I encouraged him. So he pours him a beer. The guy takes a sip, throws the beer in the bartender's face. Bartender's like, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind, man? I thought you said you were cured. He's like, I am. I still do this, but I don't feel guilt about it anymore. That's what we want to do. We want to get rid of all the guilt, but not actually change the very behaviors that are causing the problems. He tells us in 6:15, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. They wore these sandals that looked like this. Not like that. Like the next, this is the sandal that they would wear. It's a lightweight kind of a sandal, and it had like little screws kind of put into the bottom. You think of them like lightweight cleats. And they weren't the heavily armored kinds of things, but they were the kind of things that would help you not be pushed back. You could really grapple and fight and get a good firm footing. If you go back to the prophet Isaiah has this great big background to all of these images, by the way.